How bad was the latest hurricane? Just check the Waffle House Index.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
The southeastern portion of the United States was hit with a hurricane last week, and one of the measures that government officials use to gauge the extent of the damage is the Waffle House Index, a lighthearted way of seeing how quickly the local economy is rebounding. If the iconic 24/7 breakfast chain is open, then the area is recovering well. But if the Waffle House is closed, then you know things are bad. Welcome to Plain English for Thursday, September 20th, 2018. I'm Jeff in Chicago. The producer of Plain English is JR in Mexico. And you are listening to the best podcast for learning English. That's because we talk about current events, things happening around the world in all walks of life. And we go at a nice and slow pace so you can understand every word. One of the tools you can use to understand the words is the transcript. Every single episode has a free word-for-word transcript published on our website, plainenglish.com. Today's episode is number 87, so the URL is easy to remember, plainenglish.com/87. If you go there, you'll also see our translations into Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, Italian, and French. Just quickly before we start, I will be in Mexico City on Saturday, September 29th. That's in just a little over a week from now. And if you are in Mexico and would like to meet JR and me, we would love to meet some of you. Just send a note to jr@plainenglish.com and he will let you know the details. The southeastern portion of the United States had an uninvited guest named Florence late last week. That would be Hurricane Florence, later downgraded to Tropical Storm Florence, which dumped more than 30 inches of rain on some parts of North Carolina, the most rain that state has ever seen as a result of one single storm. This was the first big blow of hurricane season in the Caribbean and the southern portion of the U.S. this year. Hurricane season typically lasts from June to the end of November, but it is especially bad starting in late August. For those of you fortunate enough not to live in the path of hurricanes, you should know they are the most powerful storms on Earth. They form in the warm water of the Atlantic Ocean near the Caribbean and gather steam as they move north. They are swirling storms of high winds and lots of rain. Places most affected by hurricanes are islands in the Caribbean, parts of Mexico, and the southeastern portion of the United States. Here in the United States, we have a government agency called the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, which helps coordinate our national response to disasters, including hurricanes. And one of the ways they determine how bad a storm like Hurricane Florence is called the Waffle House Index. I know a lot of you are listening in the southern part of the United States, so you have probably seen the bright yellow signs. Maybe you have even had some eggs and buttery breakfast potatoes at a Waffle House before. For the uninitiated, Waffle House is a chain of breakfast restaurants across the southeast of the United States, especially popular in Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, Alabama, Mississippi, states that are along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, ground zero for many of the worst storms and tornadoes. In addition to its reputation for being open 24/7, serving up affordable breakfast staples and hot coffee around the clock, Waffle House is known for being one of the first places to reopen, or never even close, during a natural disaster. In 2011, after a deadly hurricane hit the town of Joplin, Missouri, an official for FEMA coined the term Waffle House Index. His point was simply that if they get to a place and the Waffle House isn't even open, then you know things are bad in that town. They even have a rudimentary color-coded system. If the restaurant is totally closed, that's really bad. That's a red. If it's open, but only serving a limited menu, that's a yellow. And if the full menu is available, then the Waffle House Index reads green. The Waffle House Index might not be as sophisticated as, say, the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Scale, but it is more than just a light-hearted way of determining how bad things are in the wake of a storm. It's a quick way of reading how bad a community's economy might suffer after the storm's initial damage is done. If the restaurant can't open, it means there are utilities out, maybe there's no running water, roads might be blocked, or suppliers are shut down. It would also indicate what needs a community might face. If you picture a bad storm, the homes in the area might be out of power, so their perishable goods, the food in their refrigerators, would go bad. If the most reliable restaurant in that town isn't open, then people are going to need fresh food before long. FEMA, the disaster management agency, said in a blog post that the sooner the restaurants, corner stores, and grocery stores reopen after a storm, the quicker a community can begin to rebuild. Waffle House is often cited alongside Walmart, Home Depot, and Lowe's as having strong disaster response capabilities. The company is embracing its reputation. The Waffle House corporate headquarters even has a storm center that monitors weather data and plans the company's response. The corporate headquarters is ready to bring in generators in the event of a power outage. A spokesman said that they want to be the place people can gather and talk about the storm over eggs and bacon and check in on neighbors. I researched and wrote that episode on my back porch where it is sunny, totally cloudless, and actually about 75 degrees Fahrenheit, just a perfect late summer day. But even as I enjoy the nice weather here in the Midwest, I hope any of you listening in the Caribbean and southern states of the U.S. are doing well in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Florence. I want to say hi to a couple of listeners today. Belkis from the Dominican Republic is listening to improve her confidence in English. Belkis, with practice, I know you'll get there. But in the meantime, no tengas miedo. Don't be afraid. Just get out there and talk. And don't worry about not being perfect. It's all about getting better little by little. That's what I know in Spanish and what all the thousands of other plain English listeners know about English. You're not alone, and you'll get better with time and practice, I promise. I also heard from Marcio from Brazil, who works for an international company and uses English at work. He listens on his commute to and from work, which I know a lot of people do. And finally today, Lucas, an engineering student from Viçosa, Brazil, who will be using English in his internships and his career in engineering, a very international profession. So thanks to Belkis, Marcio, and Lucas for being in the audience and connecting with me last week. If you'd like to be in touch, just shoot me an email. My address is Jeff, Jeff, at plainenglish.com. You can also sign up for the show's emails with extra vocabulary words and helpful links to English articles. That comes out twice a week, once for every episode. Just go to plainenglish.com/mail to sign up. When I started this podcast back in October last year, I was a little worried that I wouldn't have any new words and phrases to define after a while. But one thing I'm starting to learn about English, something I'm sure you know all too well, is that there are lots and lots of phrases, phrasal verbs, and expressions. I'm in no danger of running out. There were a couple of good phrases in today's episode, but the one I picked was in the wake of. In the wake of means in the aftermath of something. A wake is the choppy water behind a boat. So if you're in a boat with any kind of propeller or motor, look behind you as you're moving through the water and you'll see the wake. That's the white, choppy water behind you. And that's where this expression comes from. In the wake of something means in the aftermath or in the time after something happens. In the wake of a big storm, right after a big storm, restaurants, grocery stores, and gas stations struggle to reopen to serve the community. That means right after the storm, everyone is still feeling the effects of the storm. Things are still a little unstable. In the wake of a storm, Waffle House tries to open as quickly as possible. You usually use this phrase when you're talking about something disruptive, like a speedboat going through a calm lake. It's disruptive and causes the water behind to be unstable, choppy. we just passed the 17th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks in the United States. The world changed a lot in the wake of those attacks, right? We also just passed the 10th anniversary of the global financial crisis of 2008. In the wake of the financial crisis, governments had to respond to the threat of bank failures and overall panic in the markets. In the wake of the financial crisis, my company was in trouble, so I had to look for a new job. I was relatively fortunate in those times, but many people lost their homes to foreclosure in the wake of the financial crisis. For many individual families, losing a home is very disruptive. It's a disaster to that family. People had to figure out what to do with their personal finances in the wake of a foreclosure or a job loss, in the disruptive, changing aftermath of that one negative event. I actually used in the wake of in the last episode too. In the wake of the museum fire in Brazil, Wikipedia has been asking for photographs of the collection from the public. Thanks for listening to Plain English this week. It's a pleasure for JR and I to be with you each and every Monday and Thursday. We have a lot of new listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so thank you for joining us. Welcome to this great and exciting world of learning English. Keep up the good work, and remember to sign up for the show summary emails at plainenglish.com/mail. That way you'll never miss an episode. We'll be back on Monday. The topic for Monday's episode will be what to do with the remains of the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco. The Spanish Parliament recently voted to dig up his remains. Now they need to decide what to do with them.